Okay, you're live now, Mayor Beamish.
Okay, I have 5:30, we have quorum, and so I'm going to call to order the public hearing for Tuesday, July 26, 2022. This public hearing, I should say welcome and good evening. This public hearing is being held electronically on Zoom, and it's being held to consider zoning amendment bylaw number 1065-64 for a new 16-unit apartment building at 757 School Road. Rezoning proposes to change the zone from R2, single-family residential zone, to RM3, multifamily residential zone 3. I acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. I will now introduce the council members present this evening. Councillor Ilaria Ladwig, Councillor Anne-Marie D'Andrade, Councillor David Cole, and Councillor Stafford Lumley. Staff members present this evening are CAO Emmanuel Machado, Corporate Officer Rebecca Anderson, Director of Planning and Development Services Leslie Stats, Planner Kirsten Defoe, and Recording Secretary Lisa Evanson. I am Mayor Bill Beamish and Chair of this evening's proceedings. All persons who believe that their interests are affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given an opportunity to be heard on the matters contained in the proposed bylaw, or to submit their written submissions to the corporate officer before tonight's hearing is adjourned. Under the Local Government Act, the chair of a public hearing is entitled to make procedural rules for the conduct of the public hearing. For this public hearing, we will use the following protocol. Persons wishing to speak during the public hearing are invited to use the raise hand function by clicking on the hand icon found at the bottom of your screen or pressing *9 on the telephone. The meeting administrator will then add you to the speakers list, and you will be able to unmute and turn on your video when it is your time to speak. Once your name has been called to speak, you will be prompted with an invitation to become a panelist. Please accept the invitation to speak. Please identify yourself clearly, stating your name and residential address before beginning to address council. Speakers will be allowed up to 5 minutes to make their presentation and may not transfer all or part of their allotted time to another speaker. A timer will be used to track and shown on the screen to assist and keep track of time. Members of council are present to hear your submissions and not to answer questions or debate the merits of the bylaw under consideration. Council members may ask for clarification from members of the public after their submissions, and it would ask them to do that through me as well. Persons wishing to speak a second time may do so only after all other persons wishing to speak have been provided the opportunities to speak for a first time. Persons speaking a second time will be limited to 3 minutes. Persons wishing to speak a third time may do so only after all other persons wishing to speak have been provided an opportunity to speak for a first or second time. Persons speaking a third time will be limited to 2 minutes. A written submission may be submitted by email to the clerk at gibsons.ca in lieu of speaking, provided it is received prior to the close of the public hearing. All written submissions will be circulated to council and will become part of the public record. Planner Kirsten Defoe will now introduce the proposed zoning amended bylaw with her PowerPoint presentation. Kirsten, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will share my screen. All right, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I will now provide a brief explanation of the proposed rezoning, as well as information on the dates of readings and notifications for this rezoning. The subject property, 757 School Road, is highlighted here in blue. The site is currently developed with an aging single-family home. The current zoning of the property is residential 2, single-family residential 2, or R2. Based on this, the highest achievable density on the site without rezoning is 1 principal dwelling and 1 attached secondary suite. For reference, the property immediately across O'Shea from the subject site is also zoned RM3, which is the zone staff are recommending as part of this zoning amendment bylaw. Under the official community plan, the subject site is designated with a medium density residential land use. Any proposed rezoning, such as this one, is required to be a zone which is in accordance with the OCP designation. If the proposed rezoning is not in accordance with the OCP, an OCP amendment would be required. It is noted that the medium density residential designation anticipates a floor space ratio, or FSR, of 0.7 to 1.2, or generally 40 to 75 units per hectare. Staff considered that the RM3 zone would best provide for the proposed development. The RM3 zone defines maximum density by FSR and not by units per hectare, as is the case with many other zones. The maximum FSR is 1.2, which is the same as the maximum of the range of the medium density residential designation in the OCP anticipates. The medium density residential, the RM3 is shared only with one other property, which is 749 across the road. It does include permitted uses of supportive housing, apartments, and townhouses. With a view of the current proposed development of 16 units, staff note that it's able to satisfy the requirements of the RM3 zone. However, it would not meet the general requirements of Part 6, which are the parking provisions of the zoning bylaw. The applicant has provided a professional parking study that supports the proposed parking provision based on observed rates of car ownership in similar multifamily properties in Gibsons. Staff do note that although there is an insufficient number of temporary bike parking shown in the plan, this can be remedied through something at building permit phase. An excerpt from the zoning bylaw amendment identifies the number of spaces to be provided. So first and second readings of the zoning amendment bylaw were given on July 12th. Following this, neighbor notification letters for properties within 100 feet were sent on July 13th. And notice of this public hearing and zoning amendment featured in an ad that was run in the Coast Reporter in the July 15th and 22nd issues. This shows what was in the Coast Reporter. Next steps for proceeding with the zoning amendment, for your information, it's suggested. Council would give the amending bylaw third reading, which is on the agenda for tonight's council meeting. The bylaw would then be referred to Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure, or MOTI. Following that, adoption or fourth reading is to be scheduled for the September 6th council agenda. And at any point up to that, the zoning amendment can be rejected. So that concludes my presentation. I will return the floor to you, Mr. Mayor.
Kristen, thank you very much. I will now ask the corporate officer, Rebecca Anderson, to note and present any written submissions received to date regarding the proposed zoning amendment bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. There were 6 written submissions received from 6 individuals. 1 was in support of the proposed bylaw and 5 were opposed. These submissions were included in the agenda that was published at 9:30 a.m. this morning, July 26, 2022. There were no additional written submissions received relating to the proposed bylaw after preparation of the agenda. As noted, individuals may choose to forward written submissions via email to clerk, C-L-E-R-K, at gibsons.ca. That's Gibsons up to the close of the hearing. Those submissions will be collated at adjournment and circulated to council for consideration.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. We will now seek public input. Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against the proposed zoning bylaw for a first time?
Mayor Beamish, I am moving over Al Beaver, who is first on your speakers list. I'll do my best to use a timer. I have not been successful in downloading the same timer that Tracy was able to use. She did it so well, but we'll see how this timer works. So once Mr. Beaver has joined us, there he is, and is ready, I will start the timer. And I believe it was, how many minutes for the first one? 5 minutes.
5 minutes, thank you.
Well, good morning,
Beaver,
all.
welcome.
Yep, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Most of my concerns are documented in my submission. The unit density, which is a sustainability control, is far too high, and this has been well documented. I just took a quick look after hearing Kirsten's response here. I cannot find anywhere in the RM3 bylaw where it states FSR only counts, is the only thing that counts. I can't find it. I'd love to be corrected on that. Anyways, it seems that the unit density has been ignored simply because it managed to tick one box. That's the FSR. FSR is a massing control that has direct impact on a building's carbon footprint. Now, this in turn has further climate and carbon knock-on effects. So we are going way, way beyond on this. The OCP Table 5-1 land use descriptions is wrong, and it's continuing to be applied, but it just digs us into a deeper and darker hole for achieving our sustainable development and our climate core objectives. Plus, it'll inhibit our ability to meet our race to zero commitment. So that at this rate, we're just not going to make any of those. We're not going to achieve this. So that I'd like to point out that Kristen put this together. She even mentioned how mismatched the FSR and the unit densities are, and she's absolutely correct on that. I figured that one out years ago now. So that this is not a staffing problem, and I don't want to be seen as being critical towards the staffing, the planning staff. It is just the problem is that Table 5.1 is absolute rubbish. And if we continue down this path, we are just it's a disaster by design. Thank you very much. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak for the first time? Councilor Diandrat?
It's just a clarification. Can I ask a clarification from the speaker?
Sorry?
I would like to ask a clarification from the speaker.
And you ask it through me, yes?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Because the speaker mentioned that this project would inhibit ability to achieve race to zero. If you could elaborate how.
Yes, well, because it's not net zero compliant. Precious few buildings are. And if we don't start that immediately, like all new development must be net zero, we just dig ourselves into a deeper hole. I'll use my house as an example, built in 1991. And I've done a lot of renovations to it to make it more energy efficient, as did the previous owner. It is too large for my lot, and it has too large of a carbon footprint. And no matter what I do with it, renovations or retrofitting will not make it net zero. So we have this massive inventory of non-net zero buildings in our town. And retrofitting will not improve that. And improving buildings that are built from the ground up, that's where you can achieve net zero, is right from when you start from the planning, from the foundations, the footings upwards, you can meet net zero. But what we're really doing now is just adding to this inventory of buildings that are not compliant and may never be in compliance. And
Thank you, Mr. We do not have a net zero policy for town, and so that's something perhaps the next council would want to consider. So thank you, Mr. Beaver. Next speaker.
Yes, I'm now moving over Phil Rinaldi.
Mr. Rinaldi, Ms. Rinaldi. Would you, there you go, yeah.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I sent in a written submission. I'm not sure if you all have it or not.
It was in the agenda.
Okay. My mother lives 2 properties over from this property, and the parking on the street is already a disaster. With the 40-unit supportive housing development that has 0 parking for residents or visitors, there's always 2 or 3 cars parked in front of her home. People are constantly coming and going all hours of the day and night. And they're not the quietest people, let's just say that, to be polite. She's an 88-year-old widow. They built the house in 1963. They've been members of the community paying their taxes, and their neighborhood is quickly deteriorating. They are blocking her driveway. She has the empty lot as well that's adjacent to it. There's a wood lot on there. My brother-in-law goes there quite often. He parks there because he has to do yard work for my mother, who's incapable of doing it. And multiple times there's already cars parked there. I do not see any way that parking is going to be a huge problem. If anything, they should require more than the 18 or the 24 spaces. Have those people that did the study looked at the street? Have you looked at the pictures? Have you walked on that street?
Yeah, council probably won't respond to Phil, but I have. I'm familiar with the area. I'm sure they are too.
Okay, well, it's absolutely ridiculous. And what do we do when people block our driveway? Do we have to phone bylaw, or how do we deal with those people?
We hear your concerns. We're not to say here to answer questions, but we hear
Okay,
your
well, you better hear them well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one moment, Mayor Beamish, while I move things around. Oh, I see. Sorry, the timer gives me a little extra task there that I have a little bit of trouble tracking. Next is Des Delaney joining you.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Welcome.
Welcome. There's a big problem on this corner, and it was created by 500 people signed a petition saying this was a totally unsuitable place to put a commercial operation called Rain City. It was ignored. Everything that we raised as a concern came true. So now this is a very busy corner. As the previous speaker said, that street is parked constantly. On top of that, when all the mums come to pick their kids and drop them off at elementary school, it is an accident waiting to happen. Now, by putting this development in with the 16 houses and the entrance being off O'Shea, all that parking will then move further down O'Shea. A combination of parking on either side, plus the constant large delivery trucks for the commercial restaurant in that area, will effectively convert O'Shea into, at best, a one-way street and at worst, a dead-end street. The density right there is completely wrong, and to even consider putting 16 units onto that site is, let's put it in this manner, in this form. The previous council voted to put Habitat for Humanity was 6 units on that RCMP site. That did not go through for a variety of reasons, and instead you have what you have there now. That site is twice the size of this one that you are voting on now for 16 units. That corner and this community and this neighborhood cannot deal with that density in a sustainable manner. School Road cannot deal with that intersection. It's accidents waiting to happen all the time. And it's just really to rezone it for that, you're now going to open up, and seriously, you should walk, all of you, down along that road at certain times, because if you come in from School Road on the right-hand side, as you found when you did the supportive housing, the one across the road's going for 16. There's a couple of little lots. You just heard a speaker. There's Mum's 88. Those 2 lots come up. Hey, let's throw another 40 in. The one next door, that's also a large lot. So do you really want to put, because of the, what you created with the supportive housing School Road, just a zone that now turns into the slums of Gibsons for no good reason? There's zero benefit to the community of 16 units being put there for sale. Now, there may be a benefit for a smaller, specific development that is more in scale with the community. And hopefully at some stage in the future, when the lease expires and there's another council, the supportive housing will also be moved to a much more suitable location for its clients and for the neighborhood in the future. So this constant exposure, you've also got the lot beside the supportive housing going down School Road, which also could be developed once you do this into a large zone. So there is a potential with a decision to allow this through, just because the one across the road, which never really fit into the neighborhood ever, to just turn that entire corner into hundreds of people with no good traffic plan, with an elementary school, with a Legion. So it really, it's up to you to make the decision, but, it's at some stage, somebody's got to say destruction doesn't really need to continue, and it's in your hands to say, no, this zoning is denied. Please go back to the drawing board and, do something that's a greater scale. Or if you're going to do the 16 units, then charge them 10,000, 20,000, 40,000 a unit for the development, because 16 units at $1 million each, they can afford it. So, if you want to give it away and destroy the neighborhood, your choice. But if you want to just stop the destruction through the spot zoning going on in the community, this would probably send a good signal to developers and who they employ to come into the planning department with these plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney.
I see no further hands raised, Mayor Beamish.
Okay, I'll ask now, is there anyone who wished to speak for a second time against the proposed bylaw and or for the proposed bylaw? And again, send a second speak, and if everybody's kind of exhausted their first time, then the second time is 3 minutes.
We have Kathleen Vance joining you, but she's a first-time speaker.
Okay. Kathleen, welcome.
Sorry, I just
There you are. Yeah.
get all the right buttons, icons. My only interest is that we have affordable housing for the workers we need desperately for our hospitals, schools, businesses, and services in Gibsons. And I have to ask you to consider that in regard to this densification. If the densification will result in more affordable housing, I would be for it. I wouldn't be for it if it was like a millionaire slum. I'm using that word ironically because I hate the word slum. I think that's really offensive. I have to say, I think the supportive housing that is on School Road is something that I am extremely proud of. I'm proud of my town for having it there. The people I know that live there, I think are great people, and I am 100% in support of that. So in regard to the carbon footprint, I understand that man's concerns, and I certainly feel that that's something beyond my town away. That would need massive government recognition that this is a problem, because that really needs, you know, a great deal more support, I think, than the town has access to. But I understand the problem that you're talking about when everything we build makes things worse. I understand that. But I also just want to say that I think what we really need is affordable housing. And that's my whole concern, is affordability of what those 16 units are. And, but thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Kathleen, thank you. Yeah. Okay, I'll ask again, is there anybody wishing now to speak for a second time or yet a first time against the zoning bylaw amendment or for the amendment?
I see no hands raised, Mayor Beamish.
And I'll ask for a third time and final time. Is there anybody wishing to speak for or against the proposed zoning bylaw amendment?
I see no further hands raised, Mayor Beamish.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody who participated, and this certainly does inform council. I greatly appreciate it. Please note that once the public hearing regarding the bylaw is adjourned, council may not continue to receive further information or feedback from members of the public regarding that bylaw. Municipalities are legally required to ensure transparency, procedural fairness, and due process when considering public input regarding a bylaw. The legal requirement arises from common law established by court cases and includes requiring that all public feedback received be publicized as part of the open session, the public hearing, and is made available to everyone in attendance. This is to ensure transparency in everything that is considered by members of council when giving bylaws further readings. For this reason, council and staff accept public input up until the adjournment of the public hearing, and nothing is accepted afterwards. I will now ask the corporate officer to note and present any written submissions received during this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. There were no additional written submissions received during this public hearing.
Thank you. There being no further input, I hereby adjourn this public hearing. Thank you for your attendance. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for your participation. And council, we will see you at 7 o'clock. Thank you.